Hey, Curt, why the big poppy comparison when it comes to Bryce Harper?
Well, for a lot of reasons, but more than anything, I think he's good for the game.
Harper in that home run he hit, that 2-run shot, ends up getting a guy on first base. And boy, I just, without a doubt here, hopefully we're able to do it now. Xander, can we go to him now? Our friend Curt Schilling. Curt, are we there?
Can you hear me?
You bet. Got you, man. Thank you so much, Curt, for stepping in.
No worries, man. No, sorry about that.
Curt, how shocked are you that you see what you have seen with this Philly run?
Not at all.
You're not shocked. Why?
Because after, I don't know, when you can go back and look at my Twitter account probably 10 days ago, I tweeted out something very simple. I said, this Phil's team has the vibe. They have the vibe. They have that there's a certain look and feel to October confidence, and they had it. And you got to play. You got to play. You can't just have confidence. You got to go out and got to play. And you saw Harper. I mean, one of the things, and I use this analogy not loosely, but not 100%. There's the David Ortiz feel to Bryce Harper now. It's his team. It's his city. And not only has he hit his way to that position, but I think everybody on both sides wants it. I think it's what he wants. And I think I think the fans were looking for that guy. You got Hoskins and Schwarber, and the Phillies are doing what I think everybody in February said this team was capable of. They had Nolan, Wheeler at the top of the rotation. They had a lineup that could hit a lot of home runs, and they didn't really consistently do that during the season. And they're doing it now. And I remember the teams that I was on that won it all showing up at the ballpark in the playoffs and never expecting to lose. I mean, we were down 3-0 to the Yankees. I'm sure there was some hesitancy, but I never thought we were going to lose a game, even though maybe on paper we were outmatched. And on paper, I think they are outmatched. I find it, I love what the Phillies are doing. I really believe in that team, but I have a hard time seeing anybody beat Houston 4 times in 7 games.
Give me your thoughts on Wheeler and how good he's been and how incredible he's been, especially in the postseason.
I said, listen, you can go back to my Twitter. The winner he signed, I said that was the biggest, most impactful free agent signing of the year. I've loved the arm, always loved the arm. And I've always said in the past, October, sabermetrics kind of go away in October. They don't work. And October is about power pitching, swing and miss pitching. And it's the reason why a guy like Aaron Judge can hit 317 with 62 home runs up through September. But in October, you don't face 3s, 4s, and 5s. You don't face those middle relievers at the back of the bullpen who get trash innings. You see 1s and 2s and 3s, and you see the premium bullpen arms every at-bat. And those guys are who they are mainly because they can command a fastball inside the strike zone, even though watching this postseason has been rather challenging in that regard. But Nolan, Wheeler, to me, are the reasons why I believe if the Phillies are going to be World Series champions, it's going to be because those 2 guys clutch up and win 4 of the 7 games.
Curt, you were on some of the most iconic ball teams that really fed off that emotion. Like you said, the 93 Phillies, the 2001 Arizona D-backs, everyone was talking Yankees, obviously the Boston series when you guys are down 0-3. Talk about that energy. And you saw it building, like you were saying on your Twitter. It just turned into a cascade for this Philly team. And you ride it the whole way.
Yeah, I think it's one of the reasons why I feel like I can very much identify with what these Phillies players are dealing with. There's nothing like that. I mean, listen, it's almost 30 years later, and we're still one of the most revered teams in the city's history, and we didn't win. That team and that city forms bonds with its teams and its athletes like very few other places in any sport. And the whole city is kind of rising and sleeping with the outcome of the Phillies game. Then you got the Eagles, having the year they're having. And the Flyers off to a great start. So everybody in Philadelphia is feeling good. It's hard to explain to people that permeates down to the players. You feel that energy. It's what makes you never fatigued. Well, I never was. You don't. There's no fatigue in October when you're in that environment because everything is positive energy. And like I said, you've got a guy who I've always been a fan of, Bryce Harper's. I had a chance to meet him when he was very young, getting into the league, and I thoroughly enjoyed the small amount of time I talked to him. I thought he was a kid that was raised right, respectful, and all things. He plays the game hard, and it's rare. It's rare to find the guy who wants everybody to put their hopes and dreams on their back. Even rare to find the guy who wants that and then goes out and does it. And, the at-bat the other night was that's the at-bat. When he was on Sports Illustrated as a 5-year-old, that was the at-bat he had lived his whole life for. And he got a chance to do it. And he came through. And it wasn't surprising to me. It really honestly wasn't. And so those kind of things are all the reasons why I look at the Phillies and say, maybe it's their year. Because if you go back and look at 93, we went up against the Blue Jays, who were probably the best offensive team I've ever seen. And we were huge underdogs. I don't think they'll be huge underdogs. I think they will be underdogs because winning 4 out of 7 to me says you're probably going to need to beat Verlander. And I'm not sure that that's real easy to do. And Alvarez and those guys, their bullpen is just clicking. I think the Phillies bullpen has kind of figured it out a little bit, and there's going to be a mix and match thing. But you're going to need power arms to get you to the 7th and 8th inning this time, and maybe see a lineup. God forbid they'd see a lineup 3 times around. I mean, my goodness, the horror.
I saw one of your years, Curt, where you had 15 complete games. I'm like, geez, man. Yeah. You might as well just take that stat out of baseball today.
My Game 5 start against the Blue Jays, I think I threw 147 pitches. And there was never anybody up in the bullpen. It was, but I believe in my heart that I instilled that kind of confidence. And that's what you have. I mean, Wheeler's got about a 1.7 ERA going through the postseason. Yeah. I mean, I think he's starting to make a name for himself. Verlander's already done that, right? I mean, for the most part. Yeah. One of the things you realize when you get to October baseball, something that Justin has obviously seen and these guys get exposed to, is the leadoff hitter is the winning run. You don't play for 4-run innings anymore. Even though, you got the Phillies who are driving the ball, and Schwarber and Hoskins and Harper and the scary part of, and if you go to the other side, the scary part about Houston for me is they haven't lost a game, and I think Altuve and there's another guy in their lineup that in 20-some at bats they have 1 hit. Like that would have gotten great prop bets before the series because he's a motor. He's the spark plug, and I don't think he's going to go hitless in the World Series.
Curt, for you, your numbers in the postseason, as I mentioned, everybody, 11-2 overall, 2.23 ERA, 19 starts. I think your career ERA is around a low 3. I think 3.01 or something like that. What was the difference for you when you got into the postseason? Like you just mentioned, 140-plus pitches, iconic moments in Boston, what you did in Arizona, what you did in Philly. I mean, what was it for you that sets you apart that maybe we're seeing now with Wheeler and Verlander? Yeah. And what kicked into gear for you?
October's about perfection. And there are a lot of people that don't like those expectations. I can remember I was talking, and this guy was a Hall of Fame player, talking about October when I first met this guy. And I said to him, the cool thing about October to me is you're 1 pitch away from doing something people will remember the rest of their lives. And that gives me chills now to say it, because I was inspiring. And he responded with, yeah, you're also 1 pitch away from making him forget everything you did good during the season. And I was like, wow, I'm beating that guy. That guy's not going to win. And I can remember, if you remember back in 2003 when Aaron Boone hit the walk-off against the Yankees or against the Red Sox, Kevin Millar was talking about the fact that he was out there. He didn't want to be Bill Buckner, and you have to have somebody in the clubhouse that changes that mentality to from all that bullshit to, why not us? Why not? And I think that was probably one of the things I brought to Boston was the ability. I mean, the Yankees never beat me when it mattered. I didn't care who they were. I knew they were good. I knew you had to go through them, but I wasn't worried about playing them in the postseason. Now we go down 3-0 and, things are a little different, but that wasn't a stigma for me. And I think that there was a lot of guys in that clubhouse. It was. And,
Curt, would you say you wanted to play the Yankees?
Oh, yeah. No. Absolutely. Absolutely. If you look at 01 and 04, the reason they were special is because we went through the Yankees both times. And, we ended their run. They were trying to win their fourth straight in 01. And in 04, no matter what they do for the rest of their history, the Yankees are still the authors of the biggest choke in the history of the game. So that's a beautiful thing. But yeah, I always, you can see it. Like I said, you can see it in Bryce Harper. That's the thing. I mean, I think it's never about one player, obviously, but I think that Philadelphia's chances to win it all go through him. And I think that, if I'm pitching for Houston, I'm going to make sure that Bryce Harper doesn't have a signature moment, because that lights everybody up. I mean, that's much easier said than done. But that to me is going to be the key. Nolan Wheeler have to be Nolan Wheeler. You're going to need 7 innings, 7 2/3, 1 earned run, 3 hits, 12 punch-out outings from both of them, maybe 4 times. Because except for I think it was the 2002 Angels, I don't ever remember a team slugging their way to winning a World Series. You don't hit your way. It just doesn't happen because of the amount of quality pitching that you see. And like I said, Houston they have to feel amazing about their chances. First of all, they haven't snipped a loss, which is not a small thing, by the way, because you have a longer format now and more, you're playing win or go home much more often. But they've done this all without, I think, their best player in Altuve. And they can match Nolan Wheeler from a power arm starting pitching standpoint. And my God, their bullpen has been electric.
But, Curt, how do you look at Houston with all the chaos that was there a couple of years ago with, a black dot on the game with all
isn't that gone now?
To me,
well,
I think baseball needs a villain. Curt, I think they need a villain, and I think this is great for the game.
And I think that was one of the things that was absolutely influential in that Yankee series was, hey, people think we had to cheat to beat them. We'll show you. And they steamrolled them. I mean, let's be clear.
They ran them over.
They went 4-0. It was never no. And you know what the amazing thing was? Every time in that series that the Yankees put pressure on, the Astros didn't wait. They responded immediately. Like, listen, guys, you're really not in this thing, and we're going to beat you, but stop, here we're going to stop giving you hope. It was just amazing to me. And that, anybody with logic understands that's in the past. That has nothing to do with anything. Although I think it's a bulletin board thing for the Astros by far. I think that the guys that are still there are out to prove that, the first one had nothing to do, even though we know it did. But that this is to shed that. So the only people left are the conspiracy theory guys and Yankee fans, who apparently want Aaron Boone fired because his team couldn't play, which is a joke.
Yeah, I did. They want Mattingly in there now because they didn't get the team into the World Series there. I agree with you. What moment for you, Curt, defines you? Boston, Philly, Arizona?
Yes.
Your baseball postseason.
Yes.
Who do you think?
All of it. I mean, I remember I was in Arizona.
For me, Curt, it's Boston. I think of you, and it all accumulated with what you did in Arizona, what you did. I mean, all of that to me, when you're on the hill and the sock and you're bleeding and you're doing this and you're out there on the hill, to me, that's what defines me when I think of Curt Schilling in 11-2. Was that
Well,
moment there?
And you know, obviously, I appreciate that. But I think that But I was saying in 2000 when I got traded to the Diamondbacks and Buck Showalter was managing, and I came over. I started out 4-0, got us into the help to get us back into the race and keep us up. And then I failed. I was miserable the last month, and I was one of the reasons we didn't make it. But Buck had told me when I came over, he said, "Listen, we win this thing and we get to the postseason, you're getting the ball game 1." And I'm thinking to myself, oh, hold on a second. There's a 6'10" 100-mile-an-hour throwing left-hander, but he somehow in his mind, I had given him the confidence that I was the guy he would want. I think doing what I did against the Braves in '93 started all of the discussion, the shutout with Toronto, and then, you know, coming into the St. Louis series. And I don't know, one of the best series I ever played in was that we played the Cardinals in a best-of-5, and I beat Matt Morris 1-0 in Game 1 with a complete game, and I beat Matt Morris in Game 5 2-1 with a complete game. And then we win the series. Womack hits the walk-off, and then I go and throw a complete game against Atlanta, and I've thrown 4 straight complete games in the postseason. And I was like, yeah, that's kind of what's supposed to be. That's how it's. I mean, I didn't look at that as, wow, look what I did. I looked at that as, okay, I'm doing what's expected of me in that sense. And then, you know, we went against the Yankees, and I went, you know, I made 3 starts in 7 games and pitched on short rest. And you know, everybody's like, oh, statistics are against anybody throwing on 3 days rest, and you know, it doesn't work. And I was like, that again, those things are meaningless. They have nothing to do with anything. And, you know, the mystique and aura of Yankee Stadium with, you know, I said, oh, mystique and aura are strippers in a nightclub. They have nothing to do with, you know. But I felt like I was king of the mountain in October. It didn't matter. You know, I always said, you know, those guys that beat me in April to September were better than me. Maddox and Glavine and all those other guys. But none of them, and nobody in the Hall of Fame and anywhere, could have ever beat me in October. And I looked at that as the reason why you played. And you know, whether it was true or not, like most other things, it's what I believed. And I tried to
the numbers dictate it, and the numbers play it out in 19 postseason starts. I mean, 11-2. I would say recently, Madison Bumgarner, and if you want to go back into the 60s with Koufax and talk about people who are dominant pitchers, Andy Pettitte a little bit as well, but you're right there with anybody, and that leads me to Justin Verlander. How do you – Curt, I think if I'm not mistaken, he's got 244 wins. I don't think there'll ever be a 300-game winner because guys don't go past 5 2/3 any longer. So I think that number, Tom Glavine will probably be the last guy. I believe that's who it is to win 300 ball games.
Right.
It'll never happen again. So 200 is going to be a monster, and you have 200 wins, obviously. Your take on Justin Verlander's career, they'll probably play against him in the opening game in Houston.
Yeah. First ballot Mortal Lock Hall of Fame guy who, you know,
He's done more than you?
Oh, God, yeah. I mean, this guy has done things that nobody's ever done. And he married Kate Upton, by the way. You know, so he's got one up on all of us in that sense. But I always liked power pitching, and this is a guy who is the you know, the definition of power arm and ace and October guy. He's risen to the challenge in October. He's gotten better in October. He had one, you know, and in many ways, a lot of the similar career path later in the career, in the sense that he's having some of his best years at an age when everybody's looking at people and saying, you know, let's not expect as much out of him. He had one of his, might have had his best year ever this year. Yeah, Lock Hall of Famer, and somebody. I don't watch a lot of baseball anymore. It's very hard for me to watch, but
why?
Because it's not, the game has changed so dramatically.
What's the worst part of the game change, Curt?
The complete conversion to sabermetrically driven decisions.
Hey, Curt, why the Big Poppy comparison when it comes to Bryce Harper?
Well, for a lot of reasons, but more than anything, I think he's good for the game. I mean, he hasn't gotten a DWI. He didn't hit his wife. He hasn't done drugs. He hasn't done PE. He hasn't done all the things that we seem to think professional athletes are above. Right? He's made smart choices. And And I think he's probably had multiple chances on a daily basis to make bad decisions, and he hasn't done that. And I think he's just good for the game. And when you see a guy that's good for the game become a team's masthead in a city like that, and that's probably as much as anything in that city. I mean, can you imagine if Vladimir Guerrero had spent his whole career in Philadelphia, or Mike Trout, or Ohtani? I mean, Philadelphia is one of those cities that amplifies and magnifies its stardom, and I love in a good and bad way.
Yeah,
you know, the villains in those cities are the worst of the worst of the worst, and the heroes are the best of the best of the best. And you know, I ultimately think that sports is about the heroes and the villains, and it's always good to see the good guys and in a villains in a, you know, I hate the Yankees and Derek Jeter.
Yeah. Hey, Curt, do me a favor, expand a little more why you think the game is in a bad place right now. You were getting there, and with all the numbers and all that, I think problem for you.
Unfortunately, I think in many ways they're catering to an audience that doesn't exist. You know, baseball is still the only game without a clock. Yep. In professional sports, and I think there's some mystique to that. But the television dollar is driving every decision everyone's making, and their desire to shorten the game. You know, the shift rules next year, which I think are absolutely ridiculous. You know, the other rule I think they're coming in with, you can only throw to first base 2 times. I mean, that's going to have a dramatic impact on the game. I think they're trying to fix something that isn't broke. I get it. And the games are going too long and all the things that entails, but that's part of the result of this, this influx of sabermetrics. I mean, sabermetrics is
But Curt, shouldn't that evolve organically in baseball instead?
Oh, sure. Well, baseball, I mean, if you look at it, there's a reason there's different eras when you look at committees voting for star players, Hall of Fame players, because the game changes, you know, and you know, in 1968, you had Bob Gibson with a 1.12 ERA, and they dropped the mound height. You know, I mean, you can make adjustments like that, but everybody's field is still exactly the same, right? It's 90 feet to the bases, and it's 60 feet 6 inches to home plate, and those mathematics are athletically perfect. I mean, the sport is athletically perfect from a measurement perspective. The stadiums are different, which gives it a different feel. And in many ways, that is another thing that baseball owns that no one. Everybody else's stadium, the football field's 100 yards and 52 wide. Hockey rinks are all the same. Basketball courts are all the same. And the baseball field isn't. I mean, the no clock and different stadiums, I think, make baseball different. But at the same time, this urge to get the game shortened has taken so much away from the watchability of it, and it makes it hard.
2 last questions for you here. Thompson taking over for Girardi. Can you, outside of those Yankee weirdo, you know, the boss firing, you know, Martin and Don and Bob Lemon and them guys, outside of that, have you ever seen a substitute teacher come in and carry a team to a World Series?
Well, it's very, very rare. The Red Sox, I think, had it with, and I can't remember who it was in the 70s.
Was it McNamara?
It was. Wasn't that McNamara?
Yeah.
Yeah. But.
Or maybe Zimmer. It was the 76 team you're talking with Zimmer when Fisk hit it.
Right.
I think that Zimmer was the manager of that team.
I think it's rare because the managers have, in most cases, managers have very little to do with whether a team loses. I think they have a lot more to do with the team winning than they do with the team losing. But even rarer still is the manager that can do that. They can come in and change. And there was a seismic shift in the clubhouse when Girardi was let go and Thompson came in. I don't know what it was, but it was different, and I can tell you that just because part of turning a team around is making them believe in something they didn't believe the day before. And, you know, and he's a guy like that. I think Terry Francona is very much a guy like that. Yep. I think, you know, the Guardians had the year they had, people were marveling at it. And I'm thinking to myself, that's just what he does. He has a way of making his players fall on the knife if they need to for him and love him. And this guy clearly, you know, basically, I don't know what he did, but it was basically, hey, listen, you guys are really good. I'm just going to put the line about you guys go out and play the game hard, play the game right. And they did that. And obviously, listen, Aaron Boone is not the reason that the New York Yankees got swept. The New York Yankees got swept because Garrett Cole didn't pitch when he had to pitch and Aaron Judge didn't hit when he had to hit. And they know, the players know that.
Player accountability.
Right. And you know, people talk about managing the bullpen this and managing the bullpen that. And, you know, managing the what people need to understand is, and I heard a major league manager told me this, and I can't believe it to be true, but it is. He said that in this day and age of sabermetrics, there are teams whose front office, they'll have a front office person come down and tell the manager, you cannot use these relievers tonight. And because the algorithm says that when these players play a certain amount of innings over a certain amount of days, they don't do well on that third day. So these guys are unavailable. So all these bullpen moves that are being made, many times they're not being made by the manager. The manager's given a set of guidelines. You don't have a full 6 or 7 man bullpen. You have 3 or 4 guys available to you based on what the front office is telling you. So there's a lot more automation in managing than there was before. The sabermetric guys despise gut instinct and feel. And October has a lot of that. That's the other thing. Like I said, sabermetrics doesn't translate to October because guys play at a different level, and you can't account for that. And it's probably the one thing I always laughed when I first ran into Theo Epstein. I think the one thing that perturbed him and bugged him was he couldn't quantify chemistry. But he did after 2004. I think he understood that it was a massive part of putting together a winning team, which is why you saw David Ross become his guy as a player, and all the things that went with that. Because they understand they can't quantify it, but they know it exists. And you know, the guys in Philadelphia and in Houston too, they have that. They have that chemistry. And I think you have 2 teams who expect to win the World Series, which I think is the reason you're going to see. If the series drags out, I believe the Phillies win it. If it's quick and conclusive, I think if it goes 4-1, 4-2, it'll be Houston.
How do they keep it close, though, Curt? I mean, for them, because like you said, they're going to be huge underdogs.
Everything's going to come, in my opinion, everything's going to come from the mound, the starting pitching. How deep in the game their starting pitching gets them. You have a condensed schedule in this postseason, which is going to magnify the guys with short bullpens, But I think, as with most postseason series, is going to. This
series will be one on the mound.
I think it'll be one in the rotation, the starting rotation. I think whoever does better between Wheeler, Nola, and Verlander, Alvarez, I think somebody wins. Those 2 guys for each team are going to win their games, right? One of these teams is going to be up 2-0, in my opinion.
Curt, finally, here, I'm going to let you go here, but I got to say this to you. It's got to bug you, and I know you probably are absolutely pathetically just over the Baseball Hall of Fame.
I am.
I know you are, but surely, man, having your fate in the hands of pencil pushers. And
I don't anymore. And that's the thing. I don't anymore.
Curt, you can't. You can't have this career, Curt, and not think that this thing should be honored. I mean, I find it to be – the Hall of Fame's not complete without guys like you in it.
And I appreciate that, Dan. I really do. And that's one of the reasons why I'm way over it, because I think the people that know, and the people that don't like me. And that's okay. I have my rings.
What does liking you have to do with it, though?
Say it again.
What does liking you have to do with?
Well, it has everything in this woke day and age. It has everything to do with it. It has everything to do. I mean, the things that these people wrote about me were not just mistruths; they're flat out lies. And for people to consciously do that, there had to be motivation and reason behind it. You can Google and find reference to me being racist, homophobic, transphobic, and phobic of all this stuff. None of which is true. And in 22 years, I never had a teammate, player. I played against fan, clubhouse guy, coach. No one ever said anything in any capacity about me being any of those things. But suddenly, my post-playing career, I became those things. And I said earlier, I was doing an interview, and I actually had a writer who
your politics.
But I guess the hardest part for me, and I understand it, is that the writers of the world that knew me, that voted for me, and knew that I wasn't even remotely close to the things some of these people were saying, none of them ever said anything. None of them ever came out in my defense. And my former teammates, I mean, David's the only one that's actually been very open about the fact that, I wasn't any of those things. And I think a lot of people say, well, no one's coming to your defense, so to your defense. But I think in this day and age, it's a dangerous thing to do, because if you do, you're gonna get trashed and labeled and destroyed. And I'm going to come to anybody's defense if they're going to attack somebody that I know not to be something that they're accusing them of, because I want to be true to myself. I don't think other people feel comfortable doing that, and that's okay. I mean, it disappoints me, because I would like for, and I think a lot of times we take our worldview from ourselves. And I think, hey, everybody should be open and honest and truthful about who they are, because for the most part, I know who I am. I'm a good person. I've never been someone who's tried to hurt people maliciously or anything like that. And to have the things written about me that were written about me trickle down to my kids and my family. And that was why the Hall of Fame thing every year became a nightmare for me, because it was just rehashing stuff that wasn't true. And they ended up having to deal with it. But I couldn't, and that's why I wanted it off the ballot. I didn't want to go through it that last year. And I'm in front of the Veterans Committee now at some point. And that, if it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out. But again, I still have my rings and my trophies and my memories, and I still have the respect of the players I played with and played against. And whether I have a plaque or not, that's not going to change.
Jesus, Griminy. Curt, after my playing days, I got into broadcasting, and I like talking race, religion, and politics, and I've been labeled the same stuff. And all my teammates I played with in Miami, the Cowboys, the Bucks, and all the Lions, and all that stuff. People say these things, and I say to people all the time, the outhouse wall of social media, Twitter, it lies and lies and lies until the lie becomes the truth,
right,
to people. And unfortunately, for a guy like you, who should be honored, for every kid to go into baseball and watch and go into that great place. I love going into the Hall of Fame and seeing all those great people like you and Nolan and all those. I find it to be disgusting that you're not in that Hall of Fame.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
I really appreciate you coming here, and thank you so much. By the
way,
way,
pleasure, man.
Hey, Astros 4-1.
No, I think Phillies 4-3.
Philly 4-3-7. Fantastic. Hey, thank you so much, Curt. I appreciate you doing this, brother.
Take care of yourself, my friend.